All right, so I'm wrapping the other warp stick, so I have it tied to the end. Again, I'm just doing it again to show you it's going under the warp through the shed. And I'm having it go to the other side, and I'm going to tie it really tight on the other side. Okay, so this is where I start wrapping the rod. I'm going to wrap all the way down until I get to the warp. This is where I want to make sure my stick is centered. Okay, so again here, when I go up, I want to go up and to the left, and I'm going to go in the top right corner of this warp and down out the other side. So I come up from the rod and I go down to this top left corner and through the first layer of the warp to the bottom left corner. Now I'm going to go up and I do the same where it goes through the two divisions of warp, and I go from the top right corner of the warp to the bottom left corner of the warp. And then again, and then again, and I'm using about a 1/2 inch rod for this, for this area right here, holding it on. It's a lot easier if I'm using an inch rod because it gives me more space for my hands to go around it. So that's a good reason to use an inch, but 1/2 inch works just fine. And I'm putting this on a 1/2 inch one too, because that's all I had. So I'm gonna finish wrapping all the way down. And then once I get to the end, I'm gonna wrap it. And before I tie it, I wanna come back to the beginning and tighten the yarn. So I'm just gonna go wrap by wrap and tighten the yarn holding it. And I made sure everything is centered on this bar. So I'm going all the way down. And then I'm just going to tie it as tight as possible. Okay, so now that this is on, I can shift it down, and I'm going to undo one side of my back strap and put it on there. I have a really pointed end, so I have to be careful. And then I'm going to the other side. Undoing that side, and I lost the least stick in the back section, which is something I now need to add. So I can find the division in half, where it's divided in half at the very top of my warp stick, the other warp stick. And so now you can see I still have that cross there. So what I want to do now is deal with these, the bows of the beginning, from the warping of the beginning and the end thread. So I'm just going to take it out, and I just want to tie it on at the bottom. So I tie it onto it itself at the bottom. So I'm just going to tie a knot at the bottom for both of them. Like that, there's one, and I can trim the end now. And then the other one I'll do on the other side. And this one I didn't do a slip knot, so it's not coming out easily. Okay, so I have it now. On that side, it's tied and it's knotted. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add the heddles. So I have a stick here just to keep the shed open on both sides. And then I'm gonna add the heddles. I have to find, oh, here's my other heddle. So I just have two dowel rods. These are smaller than what I was originally using just because it's what I have right now. So you wanna start, and I showed this on the video today, but I'm recording it now for you. So you want to start with an 1.5 loop, and I'm just going to measure it. You don't have to measure it, but I want to be as precise as possible. So 1.5 loop, and I'm going to take my 2 least sticks and I want to hold them open. So I slip one through it, and then I twist it, and so there's a figure 8 between the 2 least sticks coming from that loop. And I'm going to use that guide to make a figure 8 about 10 times. All the way down. So as I'm doing this and going through here, I want to make sure that I hold the tension with one finger. So I'm holding the finger right here to hold the tension. And this I could have done before. You want to have your yarn going through the inside of your warp. So you can see there's a top warp and a bottom warp. So think of it as shed A and shed B. We're going to be picking up shed A. So right here, the warp thread is going right under it, and I'm gonna go lift it up. I lift up the thread that's coming through here, the orange thread, and I lift it up and I do a figure 8 around my heddle sticks. And now I go over to the left to the next piece of yarn, lift it up, and hold on to the tension there. Now I go to the next piece of yarn, I lift up that yarn, and then the next one, and I'm gonna do this all the way across, lifting up a new piece of yarn each time. So I take that yarn that's running through the shed and I lift it up. You can see there's just a loop here, and I go over that dowel and then over the other one in a figure 8 form, and I'm gonna go all the way across. And you can see right here I'm keeping space between my heddles sticks. That's really important to do, to keep the same amount of space, so when you lift up your shed while you're weaving, it's all the same. So you have your yarn all lifting at the same height. Okay, and I'm just gonna slide it down a little bit. And I want to make sure to keep maintaining that space between the two heddle sticks. I just have a few more pieces of yarn to go. Okay, so now I'm to the point where I've got one more, and after I do this one, I'm just going to do about 10 figure-8s. All right, and then, and ideally your heddle sticks are a little bit longer. So now I'm going to tie a knot that's about 1.5 inches. I'm tying a loop in the end. So right here I've got a loop that's about 1.5 inches. I want to slide it in and then twist it to be a figure-8, like that. So I have these heddle sticks. They can lift up half of my warp. And what I want to do now, and I keep pushing this towards me so that it doesn't fall out, I'm just going to tie them together tighter so they don't slip off. Especially with a thin warp like this, it's easy for them to slip off. So I'm lifting them up so you can see the heddles can do their job, and they're lifted up as high as they can go. And then I'm gonna go ahead and tie these two sticks together and knot them. And I'll do that on the other side. That just prevents them from slipping. We're almost ready to go and start weaving. I'm just going to try to make it look nicer and trim all these ends. Okay, so for the back piece, I think I'm going to go ahead and tie a piece of yarn to the end of it. This is something I did with my other one. I poked a hole through it. So if you have a drill or something, you could drill a hole through, or if it's a small piece of wood, you could poke a hole through. I used an awl on the really thin plywood, but it's helpful to tie along the back shed and the very back of it. I'm just tying a piece of yarn so that it doesn't slip. If it slips off, it doesn't fall, because it's hard. I'm not used to this type of weaving, so it's hard to keep my hands working while I'm trying to control all the equipment. All right, so now I have my harnesses. So the harnesses get lifted up for one shed, and then for the next one, the shed gets pulled, or the back stick gets pulled down for the other shed. So it goes down and up and down and up. So you can pull forward for the harnesses, push back, and push it down to get the other shed. So that's how you weave, and you can see because I tied this stick on, it's really helpful. It's not twisting as much. I think that is the basics of all of it. Holler if you have any questions.